Beginning in 1939, World War II, the largest war the world had ever seen, ravaged the European countryside and left many other countries physically destroyed with their economies in shambles. However, after the critical defeat of the Nazis in the Battle of Stalingrad and the successful island-hopping campaign in the Pacific Theater by the United States, there was general expectation that Germany and Japan would soon surrender and the war would come to an end. Post-war talks soon began to arise, and one of the most debated topics was the adoption and implementation of a new international economic system. Countries were desperate to find a system that would ensure their economic stability, autonomy, and help them rebuild after World War II. Furthermore, they wanted to create an arrangement that would solve the glaring issues that had led to the Great Depression and World War II in the first place. As such, the 44 Allied nations agreed to meet up at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire to discuss potential worldwide financial structures post-World War II, and in the next 22 days, create a new financial system which would help shape the modern world.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's often forgotten, isn't it, that this was all happening. Bretton Woods, the great kind of post-war settlement was actually happening while the war was still on, and you know, certainly the war in Europe was looking far better. D-Day was just kind of happening, but D-Day was looking to have been a success at that stage, because this was literally a few weeks after that. But you know, V1 bombs still falling on London. As you say, war in the Pacific wasn't going absolutely brilliantly, and so there was this kind of surreal moment where both the Axis powers and the Allied powers were thinking about, well, we need to try and sort out the world's economic system afterwards.
At the time, the United States and Britain were two of the greatest economic powers in the world. However, the two were at odds over how the system should be established and maintained, meaning that debates were centered around these two global powers. On one hand, Britain's economy was in shambles and heavily in debt, while the United States was left relatively unaffected and was looking to become the largest exporter of goods in the world. Additionally, the United States controlled over 2/3 of the world's gold reserves, giving them a powerful influence in the currency debate. As such, the United States favored more open international trade with a fixed exchange rate to capitalize off of their rapidly growing economy, while Britain favored flexible exchange rates to make it easier for them to rebuild. The United States called upon Harry Dexter White, an economist working in the Treasury Department, to help write up their plans. Britain, on the other hand, had the very influential economist John Maynard Keynes to advise them. Keynes proposed the creation of a powerful institution that would use a common international currency to help stabilize exchange rates and encourage long-term global cooperation and trade by forcing countries with surpluses to return excess money to an institution that would in turn lend it to countries in debt. Conversely, White proposed a much weaker organization that would have a finite number of resources to lend to countries in need. After much debate from both sides, the two were able to reach a compromise that benefited them both and the rest of the world. During the Bretton Woods Conference, the countries in attendance had mutually agreed that international trade between them was in dire need of reform. This diplomacy led to the formation of two institutions, the IMF and IBRD. This compromise was primarily founded upon the beliefs of White, but had some aspects of Keynes's plans allowing for more global relations. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, was specifically created in order to prevent the same currency devaluations which had led to the Great Depression in the 1930s. Its goal was to develop a stable environment for international trade. In order to build a new economic order founded upon global cooperation, the IMF set up a system of exchange rates linked to the dollar, promoted international monetary cooperation, supported the expansion of trade and economic growth, and discouraged policies that would harm prosperity. The other institution, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, known today as the World Bank, was created in order to help economically weakened countries. This organization was given the power to lend money for reconstruction and development to impoverished and war-ravaged countries in order to involve them in the global economic ecosystem. By jump-starting the economies of these countries, the IBRD hoped to promote trade and support global collaboration. To further global economic stability and trade, a fixed conversion was created between the US dollar and gold at $35 per ounce of gold. This was the gold standard and caused the dollar to become a substitute for gold. In July of 1945, Congress passed the Bretton Woods Agreement Act, authorizing the U.S. entry into the IMF and IBRD. The two organizations officially came into existence on December 27, 1945. In pegging all of the world's currencies to the United States, the Bretton Woods system gave the US currency, which was linked to gold, the dominant position in the global economy and allowed the US to run a trade deficit without having to devalue. This allowed the expansion of their economy and caused the United States to be the leading economic power in the world, which has helped shape our global market today. The pegging of other popular currencies like the Deutsche Mark, English pound, and the French franc allowed for easier trade between countries and brought about a new era of global trade. After the Bretton Woods Conference, international trade exploded and helped resurrect the economies of many of the European countries which had taken heavy losses during the war. As for the United States, it helped keep them at the forefront of the economy and maintain their status as a global superpower as which we know today.
Without any problem. And UK and US, because they were the victorious countries, they essentially dictated all the rules of Bretton Woods system. They said, all delegates, you shut up and listen. And one of the important arrangement there was that US dollar was supposed to be the key currency, and all other currencies had to fix their exchange rate with a small allowed variation, but otherwise, essentially, they had to fix their exchange rate with the US dollar. And because US was the key currency, just after Bretton Woods, it was quite favorable system for US, because all US had to do is produce dollars. There was a huge demand for dollars all over the world, and therefore US was obviously at a very big hegemonious situation in that arrangement.
The fixed exchange rate regime between the dollar and gold established at Bretton Woods endured for the better part of 3 decades. However, after almost 30 years on the Bretton Woods system, the cracks began to expose themselves for the United States. The system initially worked well because Europe and Japan were rebuilding, meaning that there was high demand for US goods and dollars. However, in the 1970s, Nixon was trying to deal with a rampant inflation problem within the domestic US economy. This, combined with the problem of a gold run where the price of gold per ounce rapidly increased, meant that new wage and price controls were needed. However, with a large trade deficit, along with high military spending and foreign financial aid, there were more foreign-held US dollars than actual gold within the United States, threatening the currency's value in the Bretton Woods system. Seeing this and facing internal pressures within his party, President Nixon suspended the dollar's convertibility into gold, and in February of 1973, he established floating exchange rates as the norm for the currencies of the major industrialized nations. Although the Bretton Woods Agreement may have ended in failure, remnants of its creation still remain today. For instance, the institutions created from this agreement, the IMF and the World Bank, still stand and are recognized as pillars of the global economy. Today, they are now governed by international members and continue to prove that debate and international diplomacy can lead to the betterment of society. Furthermore, the Bretton Woods system was one of the most influential ways that the world began to become more globalized after World War II. By setting the monetary pathways for countries, they set the precedent for future international organizations such as the United Nations and the European Union. This is clearly seen with the Bretton Woods Agreement, showcasing that prudent macroeconomic policies and strong diplomatic institutions are critical to maintain growth in a more globalized market. It is true that while there were failures from the Bretton Woods Conference, the ideals that have comprised it are still applicable today, as it has proven the importance of global diplomacy to ensure the prevention of worldwide catastrophe, which is why during the pandemic, the standing diplomatic institutions have helped contribute billions of dollars to help fight and strengthen global collaboration.